Hey, Rudy. I got a letter today from a Marty B. Do you know Marty B?
Yeah, she's a dear, sweet soul, a Christian sister in the Lord, and she has a burden in her heart for prisoners.
Okay, so Marty B. is not married.
I don't know, to be honest with you.
Okay. All right. I didn't know if you talked to her and if they have the same voice or if they're different people.
Different people than who? Oh, you mean, well, Marty B. is one person. I call her Mrs. B.
Okay, and so Mary is a totally different person.
Oh, right? Yeah. Mary Lou is a totally different person, absolutely.
Okay. All right. I just got off the phone talking to Deborah, and apparently Pat had a lady that was going out there and feeding the dogs daily, and somehow or another, I don't know, but animal control was out there, and they got some sanctuary supposedly to come take however many that was out there. She said that my girl, the one that you got the photos of me standing there with, Eris, is grieving, and she's not eating right now. I need to get an audio recording of my voice to Deborah. I was going to see if you could record a message from me and email it to her so she can play it for Eris, because Eris was probably not going to make it much longer if she doesn't have some hope.
You got it, brother. Say what you need to say, and it'll go to Deborah tonight.
Okay. Eris, this is Daddy. I'm okay. Daddy loves you. You're a good girl. Eris is a good girl. Daddy misses Eris. Misses her so much. Her's a good girl. You be good. You eat your food. You do what you're told, and you be a good girl. Daddy be home soon. You be a good girl. Daddy loves his Eris. Her's a good girl. Eris, Daddy loves you. Her's a good girl. Daddy misses his Eris. Thank you.
We love you, Mike. We're looking forward to when the Lord sets you free.
I just called to see if I could reach Sue, and they said that she's no longer there.
They put her back in Alouette. She was in the loony bin for a while. They moved her back to Alouette.
Yep. I don't know if they've moved her to Alouette or what. She's been trying to get... she's renounced her Canadian citizenship, and she's trying to get moved back to Hungary.
Oh, you know, I don't know if I told you, and I don't want to interrupt your thought there, but Sue is advising your wife to renounce her citizenship as well.
Yeah, I don't know if that really matters at this point.
Okay.
For that, but Sue is, and the thing is that we're really not citizens of the United States. I mean, the truth of the matter is, the United States is a corporation. It's not a place, and we were never meant to be citizens of anything. We are the creators. We, the people, created the government. Unfortunately, the government was hijacked, and it's no longer our government. Therefore, it's alien to us, it's foreign, it's a fraud, and we are not citizens unless we claim it. And that's the thing, when people learn they need to stop claiming to be a U.S. citizen, you can still get a driver's license. I actually applied for a Tennessee driver's license, and mark on there where it says U.S. citizen, I put no. Where it said Social Security number, I put all zeros, and they issued the license. You don't have to have a Social Security number or be a U.S. citizen to do anything. I demonstrated that.
Yeah.
But, you know, everybody's got to wake up on their own time and realize that we've been had. This whole thing is a fraud. Now, me trying to educate 25 people on a prospective jury pool about what's really going on, the reality is they're probably, if they're not already on the dole ready to convict me, they're probably going to think I'm a nut. Because if they've never heard it, I mean, seriously, would you believe if somebody told you that the United States is a corporation if you didn't understand that? Probably not.
It's a hard concept, but I totally believe it. I totally believe that everything is a fraud, and our government does not act in our best interest. Matter of fact, they act against our interest. And
he sent me today 28 USC 3002. And it references in there that the United States, the definition of the United States, it's a federal corporation. If you go to Dun & Bradstreet, you'll find United States of America, a.k.a. U.S., a.k.a. USA, is a corporation. All of these agencies, FBI, DEA, all these are corporations. They're businesses. They're not a sovereign country's government. They're a fraud. And people don't understand what it means to be a corporation. It's a fiction on paper. That means it's got a board of directors and CEOs, and we're not it. We are not the board of directors. We are not the CEOs. The whole thing is a fraud. It's an illusion. It's a scam. And I've been looking at this stuff for many, many years. I first heard about this when I was in my early 20s. And I was listening to older people then in their 50s telling me this, and I thought they were nuts. But these were very educated people. These were people who, and some of them were former lawyers. One girl that I knew, her father was a lawyer, but he couldn't practice law because he was talking about this stuff. This was back in 1982, before I met Mrs. Parsons, and I was in college, and she was explaining this stuff to me, and they lived in a small, shanty, rundown house. He used to have a nice house in Germantown, and he lost everything because he was exposing the fraud. They destroy anybody that exposes their fraud. It's a criminal operation.
There's no doubt about it. Anybody who exposes their fraud is put in prison, killed, or tortured, or all three.
Right, and here's the thing. They're probably going to try to shut down your YouTube. If your YouTube is having an impact, if the things we're putting out there is having an impact on people, they're going to shut it down. So the only way to counter that is to have an alternate setup someplace, or try to get somebody to help you. If they're trying to flag you and shut you down, you have to fight fire with fire by basically reporting them that, hey, this is your own policy, and if you're going to violate your own policy, then, maybe we need to report this to the FCC, who's over the whole thing.
Well, there's a lot of patriot talks about going to a place called Steemit, STEEMIT, and DTube, because there's so many patriots that are being kicked off YouTube that they've got to find another place to get the message out. And so Steemit and DTube is the place that I've heard about, and we'll see how that goes.
Well, maybe to the Power Hour, those people might be able to assist in some capacity, because I know that there's a lot of people out there in this whole truth movement that, we all have to collaborate and work together. But I'm just so hurt right now that my baby girl is grieving, and all my other wolf hybrids are displaced, and I thought they were in a friend's home in Colorado by now, and I find out that they're not. Had Mrs. Parsons contacted the judge and said, hey, I still got my animals on the farm, I need more time, the judge probably would have given her more time.
I don't know about that, Mike. I don't have any confidence in our judges or prosecutors, but you may be right, but I have zero confidence in our judges. I think they're just as evil as the prosecutors.
Well, she gave her 32 days the first time, and I don't know. I think if the media was to look at, okay, a judge forces a woman into prison knowing she's got a farm full of animals, and then the county comes in and takes them all and so forth, I don't know.
Yeah, Mike, from my perspective, we're living in Sodom and Gomorrah, and we can point at, like, hey, there's a building down the road. It's called Planned Parenthood. They kill babies and they rip their body parts apart and they sell the parts, and it's been proven to be true, but nobody in the society gives a damn. And so if they don't care about babies being ripped apart in the womb and the baby parts being sold, what do they care about, you being put in jail and your wife being put in jail? I mean, it's not that it's,
right.
they just, yeah.
Right. What you're looking at is the destruction of God's creation. You got people that are playing God, and realize me and Pat's marriage, as they say in our marriage vows, what God has put together, let no man put asunder. And they're trying to rip apart our family, our home, our marriage, because this is something that God built, and they don't want that. They want everything that God has built, everything of innocence and truth and goodness to be destroyed. They want a fraud in its place. That's why everything has to be a corporation, a dead entity giving the appearance of an illusion. Satan is the great deceiver. It's all an illusion. in the top of the pyramid in Memphis, Tennessee, is a box that contains articles including bones and sacrificial ornaments to Satan that Pat Taggart put up there when they built the damn building as a symbol and a sacrament to Satan. That's what sits in the very peak top of the pyramid arena in Memphis, which is now Bass Pro Shop, which sits right at the end of Mud Island, where every Memphis in May, they have their barbecue festival. If you go back into Leviticus and you see all these barbecues where they barbecue a ram and a goat and all this other stuff, all these pagan rituals, you've got, what is it, Planned Parenthood, which is worshiping Moloch because the Moloch god requires child sacrifice. I actually, this is back in the 80s, when my son was very young, the news media was talking about, the problem with the abortions and everything, and all the abortion clinics in the black neighborhoods. And I was with a guy that was with the media, and I went to this abortion clinic. We were trying to ask them, as though we were reporters, why they didn't put their facilities out in the affluent areas and why they focused on this places. And I remember this. I never forget this. I was in this waiting room, and they had a picture of an owl sitting there on the wall. I bet that was their deity, Moloch, that they were sitting there doing all of their dirty work for.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I understand.
I may be wrong, but I thought it was odd that you would have a large photo of an owl, a painting like mural of an owl in a waiting room.
Yeah, I think there's no coincidences, and they obviously, that whole cremation of care and Bohemian Grove, where they all gather together and act like screwballs,
Well, one of the first things when I was on radio, when I was listening, and they wanted people that would call in or come in and talk, they were talking about, this was back when my son was in elementary school, they were talking about putting these books into the elementary school for third graders to show anatomical children examining their body parts and talking about having sex in the third grade. And I was asked to come in and talk on the radio, and I went in the studio, and I said, this is insane, folks. This is just abuse of children. It's pornography in a cartoon style. And the woman, the black woman there that was supporting it, she's all about, well, yes, we need to educate these children early so that they don't have all these babies out of wedlock. I said, no, you don't need to destroy a child's innocence. That's what you're doing. You're sensitizing them to sex at an early age, which is inappropriate. They need to be dealing with children's issues, not adult issues.
Yeah, amen.
This has been coming for a long time, people, and it's not going to stop unless people stand up and speak out. And the Bundys are free now because people stood up and spoke out, and there was an awareness. If not for that awareness, that judge would not have dismissed the charges. The jury came back split. So apparently they got through to a couple of the jurors. They couldn't rig them all. But the reality is they can rig jurors anytime they want to. It's not that hard. I guarantee you. I just got sentenced to 3 years in prison for not showing up to court when they had no evidence that I was ever ordered to show up for court. And the law says you had been given a directive to appear in court. They never gave me a directive to appear in court. All they had was a court date scheduled, but it never said that I had to appear in court. Every other time I've been in court, I had a directive to appear in court. This is one of these presumption things. If you're not given a directive and you show up, they assume that you're taking on the persona of the defendant and that you're guilty just because you showed up. Well, I realized that then, and because I didn't show up, there have been other times where I was given...
All right, it cut him off in mid-sentence.